All right, well, hello everybody. Welcome back into another episode of Three Up, Three Down here on the 17th of October. Moving right along here throughout the fall. Excited here today to go ahead and get back to kind of some of the normal types of things. We spent a great last 4 weeks checking in with our World Series umpires, whether they be from the softball side of things or from the baseball side of things. And tonight what we'll do is kind of reflect a little bit more on what we've experienced in 2021, what was shared with us over the last 4 weeks. But even more specifically, what we're trying to do tonight is reflect on some of the modern trends and challenges in umpiring, and we'll share some of that from the preview video that we put out there, and then really try and develop your own personal improvement plan. Tonight's goal is to give you a couple templates and things to use so that as you think about 2022 and what exactly you want to get better at, you've got some things to think about, to write down, to reflect upon, and then really start to kind of mull over here in the next couple months. So today and next week, and the next two episodes here upcoming for us, really then taking a look at ways in which we can get better. What exactly do we want to improve upon? That's our larger question here tonight. What can we improve upon? What do we want to get better at in 2021? And then next week we'll continue on with that same idea and theme. And next week will be actually our last episode in the season before breaking for Halloween on the 31st. A couple announcements from me, and DJ, if you would drop these in the chat when you get a second here. A lot of stuff came out from Little League Baseball here this week. First of all, here, if you guys saw, the Southeast is putting out an umpire clinic November 5th through the 7th. That is an in-person clinic. Again, November 5th through the 7th. I think they're probably almost actually sold out of that clinic here right now. But nonetheless, I figured I'd go ahead and promote that one. And really good opportunity for a lot of us to have in-person instruction for the first time in probably 2 years. So that's out there. That's at Warner Robins in their facility in the Southeast, again, November 5th through the 7th. Second major thing that literally came out and announced here this week is that the tournament applications for 2022 will be out and available beginning on Wednesday of this week, the 20th, on the umpire registry. So Wednesday the 20th, you'll be able to get into the umpire registry and then send in any type of tournament applications and things like that. I'm going to hold off on questions about those tournament applications to the end of the show just to make sure that we can get through our content here. But nonetheless, tournament request forms are out there and available for you to be filled out on the umpire registry beginning Wednesday the 20th here this week. And then the last thing here, too, that's also pretty exciting news is that we'll start to see our regions begin to have in-person opportunities. I know the Central region, along with other regions, are starting to get together with the regional directors and plan for 2022 with some in-person opportunities. It's going to take some time to get us to get that prepared for, but be on the lookout for those releases either from the Central region or from any other region out there, too. And not only will in-person stuff continue in 2022, we're also probably going to see the expansion of some virtual opportunities training-wise in 2022 from Little League International as well. So a lot of really exciting things here that came out to at least touch base with and make sure everybody is aware of. And again, DJ's linked a bunch of that stuff in the chat for you if you're looking for links and things like that here to go ahead and use with regards to those announcements. Other than that, DJ Seth, anything else to add announcement-wise or think about here before we go ahead and dive into what we got on tap here for us tonight?
I think we're ready to do it.
All right.
All good for me.
Well, hot dog. Alrighty, well, we'll go ahead and get started here with things as normal. Let me go ahead and get set up here for us. A couple of things here just from me in terms of big picture, what exactly tonight looks like. As I mentioned here earlier on, the whole bigger question that we're essentially trying to get after here tonight is, what do I want to get better at in 2022? And tonight we really just want to focus kind of upon ourselves on the diamond. What do you want to get better at in 2022? So that's a question that I want to put in your mind. And, in the chat, and we're going to use the chat a couple times tonight to be a little bit more interactive than we have been the last couple nights here too. So be ready to go ahead and think about these things in the chat. And as we go through things here tonight and you grab onto something, our goal is to provide you with a bunch of information, some things to think about. And as you reflect upon 2021, as you listen to the umpires from the last 4 weeks talk about 2021, and you think about some of the things that we present here tonight, just think, what exactly do I want to get better at in 2022? And that's our whole plan, is to give you an outline, a template, and actually something to fill in here. And we'll actually have a resource to go ahead and fill out as well to try and get to that question, what exactly do you want to get better at here in 2022? So that is where exactly we want to go ahead and start our point of focus here today. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen as normal. I've got a little bit of a presentation here for us, so I'll go ahead and get that all queued up and ready to go for us. And we're going to split through a couple different things. And as I mentioned here, when we go through the PowerPoint and talk a lot about these things, what we really want to go ahead and hone in on and really focus on then is not only what exactly do we want to get better at in 2022, but specifically take a look at modern trends and challenges in umpiring and think about which of these do we need to change, which of them make sense, that kind of stuff for us as we go ahead and move in to 2022. So I'll go ahead and get us ready to go here right now. As I mentioned, there are two larger questions here that we're going after. DJ, I saw that you went ahead and put this in the chat, so thank you for doing that. But what exactly do you want to get better at in 2022? That's the number one question. And then the second question here for us tonight that we really want to go ahead and focus on then as we move into that stuff is how then do I choose what to get better at in 2022? Realistically, we've probably had a lot of information overload. You know, the pandemic has given us a lot of videos, a lot of virtual information, virtual clinics and stuff like that. So these two questions I think are really, really important for us to consider as we start to dive into things here tonight. Number one, what do you want to get better at in 2022? And that's a personal question. And then secondly, how might I go about choosing that? And our goal then is to make sure that we hit on those things here tonight. So before I go ahead and turn it over and think about some of these things here too, just to kind of give you an idea of where exactly we're coming from, what we're going to do is kind of list things in three different segments. And I think, you know, when we take a look at what exactly you should choose to think about as you develop your own improvement plans for 2022, I think you can go back and monitor a bunch of things from like the focal points or points of emphasis from really any organization, whether it be from us, the NCAA, the Federation, whatever it might be. Secondly, investigate these modern trends and challenges, and that's where we're going to spend a lot of our time then, is that modern trends and challenges here. And then lastly, considering your evaluations and feedback that you may have gotten over the last couple years. And putting all those together, taking a look at them and thinking about them in one place, writing down some of those things and then coming up with your own individual improvement plan, which we have a few templates for that we'll release here tonight. That then is our major focal points here for us as we move forward. So before we go ahead and continue to think about that, again, our goal is to give you something to think about, one of which then is our focal points. Seth, these are our focal points from 2021. So I'll go ahead and let you kind of talk through these and just offer these as an opportunity for people to think about and applying to their 2022s as well.
Yeah, so you guys have probably seen this 100 times since we released it back earlier this year in 2021. And these are a fantastic place to start when looking at things that you can improve on. You know, we talked about sharpening our skills, our habits, our fundamentals, kind of rebuilding ourselves from the ground up this year. Talk about proper use of eyes, you know, making sure we're processing the entire play. And then kind of also going off that mantra of proper timing is proper use of eyes. You know, Stu talks about a play blown up on you. Well, it just means you didn't use your eyes properly. So those couple things, fantastic place to start. Chest to ball is a fundamental we harped on. Using the snapshot theory we talked about to intake the critical pieces of information from each play and then using that to render our decision and allowing the ball to take you where you should be. You know, we can't assume where we should go. We'll let the ball tell us where we need to go. Also, wedge progression is always a fantastic place to go. Looking to improve something. You know, we talked about starting closer, going with the fielder, and then staying in the window between the fielder and the runner. Keep that one in the back of your head because that one's gonna get some reprises here this year probably. Then we also talked about being a supportive partner and displaying empathy. You know, we all come from different places, different situations, different backgrounds. You know, as we need to try to, you know, maintain our relationships with each other as we're still kind of apart. Hopefully that'll be changing this year. You know, take this time to celebrate each other, especially those guys, all these guys that just did regionals and World Series this year that all did a fantastic job at all the tournaments. And then, you know, be supportive in our conversations on social media. Don't be quick to kind of cast somebody down if they're asking a question that may not need to be asked, you know, just give them the answer and send them where they can go. These are fantastic places to start as we look forward to 2022. And I think Stu here is going to give us something else for 2022 that we can use to build off of the 2021 focal points that we've been looking at.
Yeah, and as we bridge 21 to 2022, and as you think about it, reflecting back on your own, just think about how well you may have progressed in one or more of these areas. And as Seth mentioned, some of these will actually be repeated in 2022. I'm getting ready to kind of release a preview of the 2022 focal points here. But nonetheless, as you think about things that, you know, maybe didn't necessarily go as well as you wanted to in 2021, or just if you have some unfinished business, these 5 things, I think, or different elements of these 5 things are a good place to kind of think about, consider, and then maybe put on your list to get better at in 2022. And that's what we want to do, is remind you of those things. And Seth did a great job of going through those. Kind of take a look a little bit here at the preview to the 2022 focal points. Going to continue to try and use those routine plays to build back those necessary habits, skills, and fundamentals. Realistically, still in 2021, our seasons weren't exactly the same as they were, like, let's say, in 2019. So there's still opportunities for us to make sure that we're building back those habits and fundamentals, whether it was interrupted by the pandemic or non-normalcy or whatever it might be. We got to find a way to use those routine plays. So using routine plays to build back those habits, as Seth went ahead and mentioned, that's going to be another major focal point. And I think routine plays is a big one, at least on my list personally, to get better at in 2022. We'll also talk about efficient movement from behind the plate. There are 5 different situations where we should move from point of plate. Those 5 are all listed on the right side there in that same point there. But efficient movement from behind the plate, and really knowing when to move from point of plate and how to move from point of plate, going to be major focal points here for us with regards to efficient movement, and focal point number 2 for 2022. Focal point number 3, rethinking positioning for angle distance plays at first base. That's going to be a big one. We'll talk more about that here later this evening. We've all probably been taught to find our 90. We'll take a look at how that may be changing here momentarily as well. Seth went ahead and alluded to the fact that the evolution of the wedge is going to continue to be a focal point here. A lot of us are doing a great job, as Seth mentioned, of starting closer and even starting to adjust with the fielder. But the one area where we're kind of coming up short is a lot of us are not staying in the window. So tonight we kind of want to preview that. That's a major trend that we're seeing develop here too, is the fact that we've just got to do a better job of staying in the window, and that trend is becoming more prevalent in umpiring as well. So we'll talk about that. And then lastly, the mentality of an umpire, and a lot goes into the mentality of an umpire. I've got a couple of sub-points there for us. Seth mentioned the supportive teammate and feedback. That's not going anywhere, because we need that from each other to be both supportive and constructive in our feedback. I'll spend a lot of time tonight and next week talking about self-evaluation and positive self-talk. And then the one that I'm really excited about, and I'm learning more about this from United Umpires and Brian DeBrouwer, is this whole idea of stubbornness versus approachability. And I think walking that line, these 2 different identities that we have as umpires, being stubborn versus approachable, is a really important key. And I'm excited to learn more about that from the collegiate side of things, from Brian DeBrouwer, and the professional side even at that, and be able to share that with a lot of you as well. So as you look to 2021 and 2022, trying to bridge those 2 and come up with your focal points or things to think about, want to make sure we preview these just to think about some things to improve upon. And as we get into our off season, think about our plan of attack to integrate these into what we do on the diamond. All right, I think we got a little video here to go through things. I think the first thing that we're going to go through here is just some positioning for plays at first base. So really what I want us to kind of think about, and I'm going to shift gears here and use a different application for the video just so it's not as choppy here in just a second. But what I want us to think about here, and you're going to use this in the chat, is this question that you're going to see pop up here on the screen here in just a second. So we're going to take a look at some plays here, and we're going to focus on angle distance at first base. That's where I want to start. This first trend that we're going to start and take a look at is positioning for plays at first base. And this question, and in the chat, I want us to start to kind of populate the chat as we see these clips, is to answer this question. What do you notice about the umpire's positioning in the clips that we're getting ready to see? So every clip that you're going to get to see is a force play at first base. So just compare what you know about the angle distance and positioning as now versus what you're going to see in the clips. And then this is the question that we want to try and answer then in the chat. And that is, what do you notice about the umpire's positioning in what exactly you see here in these next few clips? So I'm going to go ahead and shift gears here just to make sure that we have an optimized video output here for us. And again, like I mentioned here, the question that we're looking to answer in the chat here is, what do you notice about the umpire's positioning in these next several clips? So here's our first one. Ground ball to the third baseman. Okay, and it'll slow down here from here. So we've got our third baseman fielding it, and he's throwing the ball over to first base. What do we notice that may be a little bit different here about U1's positioning? We drop some answers to this in the chat here. Next play is a ground ball to the shortstop. Again, over to first base. Take a look at U1's positioning. What do we notice maybe a little bit different here about U1's positioning for this force play at first base? Ground ball to second baseman here, okay? What do we notice is a little bit different about U1's positioning for this force play at first base? Here's one in the angle distance box. Okay, so this one's fielded in that imaginary box. What do we notice is a little bit different here about U1's positioning for plays at first base? We'll run this back here, let it play, and you guys can go ahead and populate the chat. DJ, I'll give you the chat here to go ahead and share kind of what's coming in here. Again, a couple plays here just to take a look at the umpire's positioning for plays at first base, and we can drop in and see what exactly we see here.
So we got some comments, not at a true 90, wanting to see more of the base. Umpires hugging the line, I assume, to see that the fielder's foot is on the bag.
All great observation. So essentially what we've noticed here, and this is a great clip to stop it at, is that the umpire, regardless of where the ball's hit, the third baseman, shortstop, second baseman, in the angle distance box or in the imaginary box, we see the umpire is closer to the line. All right, and that's exactly what we see depicted in this one here too. Here's that one in that angle distance box. I think Alan Porter's our first base umpire here. I may be wrong about that. I don't think this is the Alan Porter clip. I'm sorry. But again, we've been taught beforehand to kind of be closer to the baseline between first and second base. I've instructed that as far as I can remember. But that is now changing and evolving. And again, kind of take a look at more so towards the back end of the base. Now, DJ, in the chat, I think you mentioned this. Some people started to think about why this was. Do we have any kind of reasons as to why this may be in terms of why the change may be coming about?
Yeah, both comments kind of reference the same thing, wanting to see more of the bag. George says, I assume to see that the fielder's foot is on the bag.
Yeah, those are all great comments here, okay? So the change here is basically moving away from our 90-degree angle to probably more of like a 120, all right? So from 90 degrees from the origin of the throw, it's kind of more of a 120 is the major trend that we're seeing here develop. Now, the question is to why, and George, you're right on it. This is a great clip as to explain as to why, okay? So as you see here, if we get our true 90, as this umpire does in this one, when we get a pulled foot, that true 90 oftentimes means that pulled foot is coming right at us. So technically, when we get our 90, we're probably more likely to get straight lined on a pulled foot coming right at us as we do in this clip. Here's another one look at the same play. So if you kind of think about it, this umpire's gotten his 90 or gotten around to it just like we've all been instructed, or many of us have instructed too. But as the first baseman kind of pops off the base, notice that if he pulls his foot, essentially then finding our 90, we've over-angled ourselves. And that means then we're straight lined on any type of pulled foot or a quick off, if you will, here on this play. Okay, so rather than taking our 90, the trend here now is to get a little bit closer to the line so that we have then that look where we're not getting straight line or that pulled foot is not coming directly at us as we saw in that clip. So good pickup, good question there. Here's another one in the angle distance box. I think someone, DJ, as you mentioned here too, kind of said something about this one too. A lot of times we see this being done, right? So if you think about it, the first baseman on a play like in the angle distance box or in this imaginary box is told inside or outside, especially on the uncaught third strike. And again, if we kind of over pursue it to our 90, if the fielder pops his foot off, we could be straight lined on that here too. Okay, so rather than going straight into the baseline between first and second base as far as the play allows us, we kind of take the back edge and go back 120 degrees, and that's exactly where we see this umpire, so that if this left foot of the first baseman pops off or we get a pulled foot, it's not being pulled directly at us. So getting closer to the line, 120 degrees with the origin of the throw, allows us to see or ensure that a pulled foot is not coming directly at us. And that's one reason why we started to see this trend towards getting closer to the line for plays at first base. Second reason here, and then I'll go ahead and go into the chat. Okay, getting closer to the line allows us then to be quicker to react to a swipe tag. So reason number one, I think it's better to get closer to the line is for the pulled foot, as we just went ahead and digested. But reason number two then is when we have an errant throw, now all of a sudden, when we're closer to the line, we are quicker to react and gain greater viewing angle into the play. Now, Alfonso Marquez is our first base umpire here. You can see in this clip, he starts closer to that line 120 degrees. If he over angles at 90 or even beyond 90, he's got even more room to gain or ground to gain here too. So staying closer to the line then allows us to get a better viewing angle or the best look possible on the angle distance play, either for the pulled foot or, as we see here in this play, the swipe tag as well. DJ, what's in the chat here?
Chat's popping off. Let's see here really quickly. Understand the whole straight line issue, but doesn't the plate umpire have a job to watch for this as he goes up the line?
Yeah, great question here. And remember that the first call in the infield, theoretically here, the first call in the infield philosophically always belongs to the base umpire. So, a pulled foot is not going to be the responsibility of the plate umpire. The plate umpire does not have any responsibilities here for a call at first base. Rather, that's the base umpires. In this case, it's U1. So we want to make sure that U1 then is in the best position possible to do so. Now, can the plate umpire help? Absolutely, but he can only help if asked for help by his partner. Okay, so that's the only time that the plate umpire would actually get involved here on this play. Remember, first call on the infield belongs to the base umpire, and the base umpire would have that call. If they got together, the base umpire would have to ask the plate umpire then for assistance on that call.
Can I build off that real quick, Stu?
Yeah, go right ahead, Seth.
And I'm going to echo everything Stu said. And to build off of it, I think the more we can mitigate potential conferences between umpires, the better off we are. So if we can position ourselves to get a clear look and potentially mitigate, that asking, having the base umpire ask the plate umpire for help, I think we're in a better position as a crew wise as far as, perception.
Anything else on angle distance here, DJ Seth, for plays at first base here? And we'll definitely flush this out and talk it out more after the first of the year, but just want to kind of plant the seed initially here for people to start thinking about it and be aware then of this trend and challenge that we're going to see kind of play off, especially as we start to prepare for 2022. DJ, anything else in the chat worth to bring up here before I turn it over to you for staying in the window?
Yeah, so we got to go with Steve's question. George brings up, is this more useful for multi-umpire crews and more of a detriment to two-man crews?
Yeah, great question, and that's one that we're definitely flush out. What I'll say here is that, from the A position where you're taking this play, we're definitely still going to use the same idea of taking it at the 120 angle. So from the A position, whether it be a 2-umpire system, 3-umpire system, 4 or 6, this is kind of what we're doing moving forward here, or at least thinking about here as well. Now, not every umpire, Major League Baseball and college baseball and things like that, is using that 120. I'm just identifying a trend here, but there are merits to it, right? I mean, we saw 2 plays where we had a pulled foot right at us and a swipe tag that happens really quickly. Personally, I'm going to the 120, and again, it's in a 2-man umpire system. I'll use it in 3, and I'll use it in a 4-umpire system as well, because again, all of those are the same play essentially, regardless here. My responsibilities then are the same. Anything that would be overthrown and out of play belongs to my plate umpire. Because I'm closer to the line, that means I'm actually closer to the cutout. So if we get an overthrow and I've got to chase the runner to second base by pivoting in, I'm actually closer than when I would have if I went ahead and went all the way out to my 90-degree angle. So I'm closer to the cutout to get ahead of the runner from there as well. So I think there are a lot of benefits here too. It's not only on vision on pulled foot and swipe tag, but even then to get ahead of the runner on an overthrow potentially, because now we're closer to the line, which means we're closer to the cutout. So we're closer to our pivot to get ahead. Good question, George.
Tony brings up a concern. What in the current position? He's referring to the play, I believe Red Sox play in the angle distance box being straight lined on the catch when it hits the mitt. Mm-hmm. And that's his concern.
Yeah, that's a really good one. So, in talking to some Major League Baseball guys here over the last 2 or 3 weeks, the ones that are still using their 90, Tony, that's why they're still using their 90, is because they're really worried about being able to see it. Now, a lot of those guys at the 120, kind of getting that like 90 degrees to 120 angle, but a little bit closer to the line, they're relying more on their ear than anything else. You've probably even seen guys take the back end of the double play in foul territory. Probably even seen guys take like a routine ground ball to the shortstop in foul territory. I've even seen that here in the postseason for Major League Baseball. And again, the whole thought process here is defenses aren't as great as they used to be. And as fielders kind of get a little bit more errant, unfortunately, our mechanics are changing here too. So I think, Tony, to answer your question, anybody who's wondering the same thing about, does that affect my vision to be able to see the ball into the glove? Yes, potentially. Do you have to go all the way to 120? No. But I think, 90 degrees is definitely as far as we want to go from over angling, but probably even shorten up a little bit more so closer to the line. And I think what you'll find, and I found this in some fall games here this year, that if you work closer to the line and you just kind of feel it out, you'll find your spot where you can still see it into the glove, still hear it, and really still see everything so that you don't get straight line on that pulled foot and so that you're quicker to react on a potential swipe tag. Good questions.
Kevin, I'm hoping that kind of answers your question as well. There's evolution everywhere. Kevin had asked on the old 9-3 put out. He's seeing guys take the play in foul territory at a 90, probably because that's what the play allows. He said that he knows that at one point it was frowned upon, but is that evolving?
Yeah, that's definitely evolving too. So taking that 9-3 put out in foul territory definitely encouraged. And what we'll do after the first of the year is we'll do a segment really on breaking down all of this stuff and kind of talking about not only the angle distance in terms of stuff on the infield, but when is it appropriate to take it in foul, when isn't it? And I think at the end of the day, if you think 90 degrees, somewhere between 90 and 120, whether that puts you in fair or foul territory, from now on, you've got a little bit of liberty to work through that stuff. Now, to George's point, in a 2-umpire system, I'm probably trying to take as much as I can in fair territory closer to the line so that I'm not behind the runner, so to speak, from foul territory. But as you work multi-umpire crew systems as you won, definitely working that 90, that 120, whether that puts you in fair or in foul, kind of got some opportunity and some leeway to work through that here as we think about the 2022. Anything else here on angle distance plays or anything for plays at first base? Some really good questions and a lot of good information feedback-wise for us to prepare as we get ready for 2022 and talk more about that.
Chat's clear. Great questions, guys.
All right, DJ, I'll let you go ahead and get here. The next big question here before we get into it is this one. What does it mean to stay in the window? So, DJ, you're going to go ahead and take this one. This kind of gets us to a second major trend, and that then happens to be the evolution of the wedge. And as I mentioned, what I think we do a really good job of right now is starting closer. And really, we've even started to get better at adjusting with the fielder. Still got to work on that one. But starting closer is kind of the first box that we have really checked off, I think, throughout our evolution. And staying in the window then is the next one. So, DJ, this one's all you.
Cool. So focal point, wedge progression, progression means constantly getting better. So staying in the window is going to be key. Trying to find that space, that imaginary space in between the fielder and the runner. Want to remember those steps as well. Having the ball, having the play, having the runner sliding at us. So let's run through some clips here, and we'll take a couple peeks here. First key, obviously, stay close. The closer you are, the less large steps you have to take. So go ahead, Stu, run it through. We see here, getting into position, staying close. We're talking maybe 2 feet off, and then that slight lean on the left side of the catcher's hip there. And leaning, getting down, finding that window, realizing that the tag is going to be down there. We're not giving up on the play. We're continuing to move with it, keeping our head and eyes steady, and then again using proper use of eyes, because proper use of eyes is good timing. We're going to see that tag applied right there. See the window. That's a perfect view of the window right down in there. This is a great angle for that. We've got that play, and it's, again, instead of just giving up because we're that play happens fast, and sometimes people would say, well, that's going to blow up on me if I'm that close. It's not going to blow up on you, I promise. Get down in there, make some movements. Quiet steps are huge key as well, and finding that window. We got one more, right?
Yeah, a couple more here. Yeah,
yeah.
Yeah, and just so that we're clear, as DJ talks about staying in the window, this is a great still shot. Pat Griffin's our plate umpire here. He's in the window, and by the window, we mean that space between the runner and the fielder where we can see the tag attempt. I think a lot of times where umpires are missing is we start closer, but we never get in the window, and we kind of just luck out where the play cooperates with us. We have to continue to adjust and take those quiet steps, as DJ mentioned, to stay in the window, that space between the runner and the fielder. I think there's 2 more clips here for you to talk through too, DJ.
Absolutely. I think a lot of times when we started, talking about wedge and trying to get really good at it, we were so focused on that fielder's hip, and we quit, and we would get to the hip and quit moving, and realizing that there's still more to the play and more to that angle. So here we got another play at the plate, right on in there. And as you can see, peering down in, using a lean, maybe could be another step to the left if we're being picky, but using the lean, and again, right there as the play follow. I love this shot because it shows in the window, still in the window, and then even as the play is already passed, still processing everything. No tag, nice, crisp, safe mechanic there. Again, those quiet steps, getting down, a nice lean right inside the window. Last, this is from our current playoffs. Third base umpire Dan Bellino here. Again, starting close, no major movement. I think that's one of the things is if we continue to do very well starting close, that almost eliminates any last minute steps that we have to take, and it makes us that much steadier. Again, you got the window. I believe there's going to be a slightly better angle on the next clip. Yeah, here we go. This will be it right here. Ball's coming in, and right there, boom, there's your window. In between, you got the play, you got the tag. That's what we're looking for right there. Steady, proper use of ice, confirm, firm, and secure possession, make your call. So starting close, 5 to 7 feet, maybe closer, quiet steps if you need to, and then use a good lean or controlled movement on those quiet steps to find yourself down and continuing to move into that window. If you're moving as the play happens, it's fine, provided it's controlled. Any questions, any more comments, Seth or Sue? Any questions in the chat or anything like that, guys, feel free to drop them in.
Yeah, just one other point for me. I think, we talk about staying in the window, and hopefully we understand that the window is that space, as we see here, between the runner and the tag attempt, and that's where our head should be. Our head should be in the window. And the only way we can get into that window is if we adjust with the fielder. If we fail to adjust with the fielder, then we either get on the outside of the runner or the outside of the fielder. We get straight lined on that one. Or we just get lucky and the play cooperates with us and opens it up. So, starting closer, as DJ said, is a huge point, but then adjusting with the fielder to stay in the window, to keep our head and eyes in between the runner and the fielder. That's the next step that we got to take here in making improvements for 2022. Anything else there, DJ Seth, in the chat? I can't necessarily see it because I'm screen sharing.
Chat's clear.
Yep, we're all good.
All right, last one then here for us to go ahead and address for us before we go ahead and wrap things up, and Seth will take us through this one, is kind of another modern trend or challenge, and that is the fact that catchers are now dragging everything that we're going to see. We see this in the case of the NCAA. We see it in Major League Baseball here too. So the modern challenge, I guess, for us to present here tonight is the fact that catchers are dragging everything, and what effect then does that have on us on our strike zone. So Seth, I'll let you go ahead and take this one.
Yeah, so to start, at the Little League level and the youth levels that we do, dragging every pitch is nothing new for us, right? But at these higher levels, a handful of years ago at the MLB level, if the catcher thought the pitch was a strike, they would stick it. If they didn't think it was a strike, they would typically grab it and just throw it back. Now we're starting to see these catchers drag absolutely everything. And you'll see this in the clips. You can go ahead and let them roll through. This one's a great example. It's a good pitch right there on the lower edge of the zone, and you're going to see this Astros catcher pull it up to the middle of the strike zone. Hallian's going to ring him up on this. I believe it's Tom Hallian back there. Mm-hmm. He's going to ring him up on this. But typically, a handful of years ago, this is not a pitch we would see a catcher drag. This one, again, just like I mentioned, this is one they would catch and then typically throw back, but because it's up. We're going to see this catcher again drag it down to the upper part of that zone. Thankfully, the home plate umpire balls that one. And then on our last one here, we got a nice upper outside corner pitch, and we're going to see the catcher drag this one back into the strike zone too, even though it's in the strike zone. So the key here is we got to recognize that the catchers are going to drag everything, which to me is kind of taking that whole idea of catcher presentation. And it's time to throw that out the window, because these guys, the only thing they're presenting to us is a drag, no matter where this pitch is. So it's important for us now that we sort of start to dismiss what the catcher is telling us, and we have to really start focusing on the ball. When I first started coming up, we always talked about a little bit about catcher presentation and how they catch it to help us out. It's time to get rid of that. Now we have to focus on solely the ball. Don't worry about what the ball does after the catcher catches it when it comes to adjudicating the pitch. We have to adjudicate the ball for what it is and where it crosses through the zone, because these guys are going to start, making our lives, sort of really, really hard, because they're going to make everything look better than it actually is. So we really have to focus on, calling the pitch for what it is, where it crosses the zone, and don't worry about what those guys are giving us.
Yeah, and to Seth's point here, what he's making, that just basically means that we've got to use our eyes properly and more diligently, that we're going to track the baseball and ultimately here kind of plot it on the same type of points that we would see, imaginarily wise when we're watching a game. And that's essentially what we have to kind of go ahead and do is track the ball more aggressively, more intentionally here to kind of combat that modern trend. And that is then to drag everything here. Last thing I got to go ahead and do, and I'll share this here, my screen with us here one more time, is just to kind of put into perspective where we're headed next week. And that is to kind of think about a couple different things here relative to what we've discussed tonight. Obviously, we presented the focal points from 2021. We've taken a look at the focal points for 2022. We've shared some of the modern challenges here and trends here too. But realistically here, as we start to think ahead next week, the pandemic's given us a ton of different information and we've absorbed it virtually. We've got widespread video. Many of us have been to camps and clinics and we've gotten feedback from evaluations. But a lack of in-person training too has kind of shortened up our opportunities over the last 2 years to kind of get into things here and think about stuff and what exactly we want to do to get better. So DJ, I'll let you link it in the chat here, but we came up with a resource for everybody to use and we'll talk our way through the resource more so next week. But as we're essentially then on information overload, quite honestly, between the pandemic, what we've thought about over 2021 and stuff like that, we've got to find a way to kind of boil it down to what matters most and what we want to get better at. And that's essentially where we'll start next week. And answering that question, what do I want to get better at? And then putting that into kind of some retrospective thinking strategies and templates here. So we want to give you that template here. We'll drop it in the chat. I'll link it in the YouTube post as well so that you can have that too. But realistically, we want to give you a couple different resources. And a bunch of people think differently here about this whole idea of honest and feedback and positive self-growth and things like that. But what we want to do is give you a couple different templates to think about your preseason plan, your post-game reflections, mid-season reflections, season in review and things like that, so that we can start to apply a lot of these modern trends and challenges that we've addressed tonight with our reflections on 2021, the focal points and whatnot from 21 and 22, and kind of put them all in one place and then develop our own self-growth plan for 2022. And DJ, I'll let you link that in the chat. And again, I'll remember to go ahead and link that one as well in what we post on YouTube as well. So give you guys a week to kind of look through that one, think about what we've presented tonight, think about that question. What do you want to get better at in 2022? How do you choose that? Well, we kind of gave you that whole idea here tonight on some trends and things like that here as well. Go ahead and get ready to wrap things up here too for us. Next week, as I mentioned, we'll talk about putting that plan together. We'll walk through the guide that's linked for you in the chat and realistically putting together that self-improvement plan either for 2022 or for some of us, especially our Australian brothers here. You guys are getting ready to go here in a couple weeks here as well. So maybe this will help you think about what exactly you're going to get better at beginning December 1 of 2021 into 2022. We'll be back to go ahead and wrap things up next week. That'll be our last episode of season number 7 here on reflecting on 2021 and beginning to prepare for 2022. So we're excited then to wrap things up next Sunday, the 24th, same time, same place here, 8 p.m. Eastern. We'll look forward then to go ahead and building our self-improvement plans here from what we've discussed tonight and what we reflect upon here in 2021. Thank everybody for their participation. We'll hang around and kick it. If you guys have any further questions on stuff, be ready to go ahead and address those things. But thanks for joining us here. We'll see everybody then next Sunday for our last episode of Season 7 here, reflecting on 2021 and building our self-improvement plans for 2022. Thanks for being here. I'll see you next week at 8 p.m.